Hello everyone, this is Joe. I wanted today to talk about the subject of duality and non-duality consciousness. This is something that we talk about in the New Paradigm Multidimensional Transformation workshops and courses, and the main point that I really wanted to go in today was going in depth regarding the differences in our perception of duality and non-duality consciousness. More and more people are talking about unity consciousness, and also more and more people are becoming aware of the different degrees of, say, duality and non-duality consciousness. And so what I wanted to do was just share with you some information that I've accumulated and how I describe this information in my workshops. And the main thing is just to take of this information what aligns with your own heart. I'm not sharing this information as a belief. I'm sharing it to assist you in your own remembrance of your own levels of eternal being and, say, non-duality consciousness, to assist you in your own path of integration of unity consciousness and so on. So, to get started, I'm going to be talking a lot of different things. I'm going to be trying to present the information that the easiest way that I know how to describe it. It's not the easiest thing in the world to describe. So I'm going to be using different examples to lay out the perceptions of duality and non-duality consciousness. These are just examples. They are not exact, and everyone might have different views of how these levels of our being basically are laid out. This is not like it's a one thing. We all see different levels of, say, perception, and all levels of our being basically are perfect the way they are. So if we were going to describe, say, duality levels of our being, we would probably describe them, from my own view, from the 8th dimensional level of our being and down. Our I am presence exists in the 8th dimensional level of being, our 8th chakra level of light body and chakra and so on. So anything down from those levels have degrees of duality, or, say, polarity and so on. It's the perceptual views of these levels of our being that basically is what creates the perception of separation. So if we were looking at these levels at this pyramid here, and the 8th dimensional level of our being was the top of the pyramid, then as the levels of our being, say 7th chakra, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and so on, these were broken up on this pyramid going down as far as this goes. So if the bottom 3 chakras, we'll start off with those, we're down here on the bottom of this pyramid. And what this would represent would be the bottom 3 chakras in our physical energetic system. And the perception of these 3 chakras, of course, have the widest, say, span of duality, polarity, the widest span of separation from, say, our own collective eternal knowledge, say, as our I am presence has, or the levels of our being beyond the I am presence. So these levels, of course, are the levels that have the greatest levels of fear, the programs of judgment of not only our own selves, but also the world as it is, the earth, other people. These levels, of course, create the levels of our own survival, of our physical being, survival knowledge that's built into our DNA. So, and so on. So if we, as we live in this life and so on, we might have the drive within us to learn more about ourselves, to release the levels of duality within our being and integrate more of our eternal knowledge that lives in the states of perception of non-duality, less and less duality, to where you become more one with your own, say, I am God self level of consciousness. So if we were integrating and releasing the patterns from our, say, levels of fear, we're releasing levels of fear, we're releasing the patterns of judgment for which we perceive in the world, and we were integrating more of our own heart consciousness, which began at 4th chakra, 5th, 6th, and so on, we would be releasing the levels of and integrating more of our own eternal being, say our own levels of eternal knowingness, and so on. And as we say integrate more of the perception from the 4th, 5th, and 6th, and so on, in those ranges, our view of the earth, the universe, each other people, we might have more peace and harmony within our being that, again, is more in harmony with the other things in our environment, our reality, as far as that goes. And the same goes for these other levels, 6th, 7th, and then 8th. And these are perceptions, the perceptions of the reality, as far as that goes. So, using this example, that these levels of our being are perceptions of reality. We'll move on to my other example that I use, is this building here. You could view it as a 12-floor skyscraper of any type of large building, as far as that goes. The example I'm going to use here just has 12 floors, but the levels of our being, of course, have many more floors than the 12, but we're just going to use 12 for this example. So, using the pyramid idea regarding the levels of our expanded, say, chakras and energetic systems, which are tied to perceptual levels of our own consciousness, these 3 levels, of course, would be down here in the bottom of the building. The perception that we would have from these levels, of course, when we look out the window of the building, the skyscraper, we would see maybe a nice lawn or some trees and maybe a ridge or a mountain range off in the distance, and we would have these perceptual views of this reality as far as that goes. So again, when we feel and have the willingness within ourselves to say look beyond these levels of our own perceptual view of reality, we integrate and release these patterns that hold our perception in these levels of the building. Our perception then integrates, say, maybe the view from the 4th, 5th, and 6th levels of the building, and so on. So looking from the levels of the 4th, 5th, or 6th levels of our own perceptual being, we might see the same trees as we saw on the 3rd. We might see the same mountain range off in the distance, but we might be able just to see beyond it to the degree we might see a lake. Now, nothing has really changed regarding the reality. The lakes, the trees are all the same, but our perception of the tree and or the landscape has just broadened its view. Our perception of the same landscape is the same, it's just a lot of a wider view, where we're able to even see the lake that's on beyond the ridge or mountain. The same thing goes for the 7th and 8th and 9th and so on of the building. When we're integrating these levels of our own consciousness, we are moving out of the duality perceptions or polarities. It's the integration more of our own eternal consciousness. The I am presence, of course, is the level of our being that creates the soul that attaches the body. And so this is more of our eternal being, the I am presence. From the I am presence in the 8th, you move up into the 9th, 10th, and 11th. The 9th level of our being basically is what a lot of people refer to as Christ consciousness, more unity consciousness. A lot of people might refer to that as Buddha or Krishna consciousness and so on. That's where that level of our being basically starts and move up from there. And the 12th dimensional level is our monad, God consciousness, and so on. So the main thing is, regarding these levels of our being, to say if we allowed the integration of our expanded level of being through to the 8th or 9th level of our own consciousness, we would still be necessarily in the same building. Our perception of the reality then, of course, would have a much more expanded view. We would see the same trees that we would be seeing if we were still perceiving reality from the duality, very broad spectrum of separation from our ego consciousness. We would still see those same trees. We might just be able to see beyond the mountain, to see the lake, to see the same mountain ranges, but to just a greater degree. Everything is still one. So in order to, this is what a lot of people I hear also explain, and also through my own knowledge about, and my own experience regarding the mental levels of our being, these levels will have the perception that we must release, say, the ego consciousness, or we must leave it in order to, say, move into an expanded level of our own self. But really, what I found to work in perceiving these levels is to see that we're not really escaping anything. We must accept, love, and embrace all levels of ourself, to see that these levels of our being are perfect the way they are. Even though the ego consciousness cannot perceive reality from the 4th, 5th, 6th, or any of these other levels, because it is only on these levels of their own being. This building, or this skyscraper in itself, represents the 12 levels of our own levels of consciousness that make up our whole energetic systems of our chakras and light bodies and so on. The more that we allow the integration of our expanded levels of consciousness to descend into the lower levels, it's a matter of allowing the space for these expanded levels of existence to descend. How do we do that? Well, you can look at it as if you were filling your glass, if this was a glass, if you were filling your glass up with 80 to 90% living and, say, the perception of fear, the lack of, having fear of, worry, guilt, anger, frustration regarding the reality the way it is, viewing your separation through other people in the world, your separation and how you're living your life, and you're living and disrespecting your own body or disempowering yourself in some way. Of course, we're living in these levels of, very much polarity and duality consciousness. So in order for these levels to go, we must open the glass of our own self for these other levels to flow into. Therefore, we release the disempowerment. We empower ourselves through our own love. We love ourselves just the way we are. We love the ego just the way it is, to the degree that we're integrating our own eternal knowledge that then overrides the ego consciousness in these other levels of our being. The ego becomes less prominent from being, if we continually speak and live our life from the ego consciousness, of course, then that's the perceptual level of reality for which we are going to see. So in order for these other levels and so on to exist, again, we have to allow the levels to descend, and that is done through changing our own patterns of how we see the world, choosing love over fear, releasing judgment on ourselves and other people, having respect and taking responsibility for our own life, our own creation, and what we're living in. Taking responsibility for all levels of the building. Christ consciousness, Buddha consciousness, Christian, whatever you wish to call it, unity consciousness already is a part of us. It is part of our own structure. It's not separate from us. The ego mind, the mental mind of our being, might see it as separate, but it's already there. It's these levels of duality and so on. The more that we let go of those levels, choose to allow to integrate more of your own I am God consciousness. Those levels that see life in the duality standpoint become less and less prominent. You're integrating more and more in your own eternal light and knowledge. So another example I'll use is to say if everything that we were seeing in this duality stance, a lot of people that I've talked to and or heard speaking regarding duality, non-duality consciousness, it's the perception of it like it's a belief. A lot of people say, well, yes, there's plenty of other frequencies of energies. There's light and dark energy. So integrating unity consciousness, non-duality consciousness, and so on is not a matter of a belief of saying light, the separation of light and dark does not exist. Yes, there's a large spectrum of energies that exist within our universe. Now, from this range, of course, we'll have different frequencies of energy. If this was light and this was dark, of course there's going to be all kinds of spectrum and energies and beings and other types of energies within the whole spectrum. It's both light and dark. We are existing in a duality state of physical existence. Yes. So it's not a matter of denying where we physically are residing right now. We are physically residing within the lower frequency ranges of, say, our 12 density ranges of our reality. So there's no denying that there are many levels of different levels of frequency. So if we were looking at our perception, let me erase this line here for a second. If we were viewing our reality from the standpoint of our reality, of other people, other things going on in our life, we might have different things that we're currently being faced with, and so on. These patterns, or whatever we think, we can call them thought forms, or whatever you like. Say one thought form of one fear of losing money. It might be right there. One thought form of, say, our own disempowerment, that we are too tall, too short, too big, or my hair color's the wrong way. We're viewing ourselves imperfect in some way. So we have all these other thought forms in different things. our life perception, in a way, is nothing but an accumulation of our own belief structure that we created and we placed against ourselves. So we might have all these different perceptions and thought forms and so on within our own perception of this reality. They're all within this bubble that we're perceiving. And this bubble is our perceptual level of the existence. So as we, of course, live our life, we grow older, we gain more experience in our own life. We're conditioned, of course, when we're younger regarding our environment, the people we're around, our own mothers and fathers and so on, of how we're supposed to view reality. These are belief structures. It's also done through, different religions. This is the way it is, and nothing's outside of this spectrum. These are bubbles of perception. They are belief structures. So the more that we, say, put security in our own belief structure or our own bubble, the more that we hold on to it, the more that that layer of the bubble becomes strengthened, it gets thick. Our belief structure becomes so thick to the degree that anything presented to it from outside is viewed as a threat. Therefore, we feel like we must defend our own belief structure. So the more that we're releasing our own states of duality consciousness, we're also releasing the belief structure, releasing the boundaries that we are blocking from other levels of our own existence, other levels of our own levels of a, say, perceptual view of reality. So as we're doing that, we're releasing, say, the patterns of guilt, fear, judgment, anger, and we're choosing to release these patterns within our own self. The veil of our own structure becomes thinner and thinner. Another thing is to view that when we're in these ranges of duality and non-duality, our perception is continually viewing everything from levels of polarity or duality. Everything is dark or white. Everything is one way or another. Right or wrong. Good or bad. And so on. These are levels of our own duality consciousness. So if we looked at this here, what does this main symbol represent that a lot of people might see is yin and yang. The yin and yang symbol of light and dark, and so on. So it's not a matter of, again, being in denial that we are in a third dimensional density, physical being that lives in these states of many, many different frequency ranges of duality here. It's not a matter of being in denial of where we physically are. It's a matter of accepting where we are, loving, accepting, continually having the willingness to release what we have known to be true into an expanded level of our own knowledge of what really is real and what truly does exist. To be able to see beyond the mountain range to the lake in the expansive level of this reality that is beyond our view. So if we are always looking at duality from one side or the other, say even from light and love, and we are always trying to separate ourselves from the other side of whatever you wish to call it, either that be dark energy or negative energy or whatever you wish to define it as. Again, we're living in the duality state of being. Now, there's nothing wrong with seeing these levels. Again, I'm not trying to describe this as there is right or wrong, better or worse, higher or lower. It just is. It's just a perceptual views of our reality. So the main thing is to also see that there are many different levels in between. It's just not light or dark. It's just not two options. Through these levels, there are many different, say, perceptions of duality. Less and less of the duality and polarity. As we're integrating and having the willingness to release, we're integrating more expansive views. The very hard-lined, say, perception of only existing in the light and the darkness is not even a part of you and you're trying to always push it out and so on. The more that we accept our own levels of, say, shadow or our own levels of darkness, our ego in itself is a level of darkness. It is a perceptional view of darkness that lives in the illusion that of wholeness, of oneness, and so on. So the more that we accept more of our own self through our own transformation and releasing, we start to see and gain more knowledge of the energies that exist, the energies that we are, the energies that exist in reality, that exist in the universe. We might, for a period of time, begin to learn how to clear and more integrate, having more space within our being, more flow of love, and so on. But it's a matter of releasing the duality view of light and dark, to see that there is a large spectrum of energies here. Yes, it's not a matter of being in denial, but it's a matter of acceptance, just like we accept the ego consciousness for what it is. We love the ego for what it is, but we choose to move beyond it, to integrate more of our own patterns of eternal knowledge, our own Christ consciousness, our own unity consciousness, or whatever you wish to call it. So if we were looking at this yin and yang diagram, and if we were looking on this as a scale of perception, of view of, say, the 8th dimensional level and down, the more that we're integrating more of our own I am God self, what we're doing is we're moving and integrating the veil of going from in different perceptional views of within the duality views of the diagram to being the bubble, to being the outer layer of the bubble that sees reality for what it is. It is duality. There are many different frequencies within this universe. There are many different levels of beings, densities, frequencies, and everything else. It's not a matter of being in denial that something does exist here. It's a matter of acceptance. Love without conditions. Releasing the separation from the levels of your own being allows you to have the perception of, again, of being the outer layer of the duality spectrum. From there, of course, there's more. There's just more and more integration of your own eternal knowledge, of your own being, and so on. There's one more thing that I would like to see or show you from this, is regarding the levels. We'll see if I can draw this pretty good here. There we are. See this flower? So, for those of you that have ever heard of, or some of you might not have heard of, the flower of life. And so let's look at this regarding everything else we've tied together here regarding the levels of our consciousness and perceptual views of reality. So I've got 6 levels in here. 6 different petals of the flower. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now if we looked at this regarding our own energetic systems and so on, 6 chakras. 7th chakra is the top, of course. Main crown chakra, levels of our own physical self. Then you have the 7th. 6, 7th. The outer layer is the 7th. This is not an exact representation of how our energetic systems are laid out. It's an example of how these levels are all intertwined. They're all one. The more that we accept our being for what it is, the more that we accept our own self, we're able to integrate more of our own self. So by integrating our own, say, 6 levels of our consciousness, 6 chakras and so on, we move into the 7th, and so on. Now if we viewed the 7th, the 8th would just be another outer circle that encompasses the 7. It's just the outer layer of our own level of being that has another, say, perceptual view of the reality to a greater degree. My artwork is not the best, but I hope that this has been able to assist in this description, that all is intertwined, and it's not a matter of releasing and or, say, escaping one level of our being. It's a matter of acceptance. It's just a matter of acceptance, just like other people in the world. No matter what level of their perception they're viewing reality from, they are still a part of us. Just as this building, this representation of the yin and yang symbol here, and this flower of life, this same representation could be used for our collective being. We are a collective being that exists on many levels. We are multi-dimensional beings. We don't not only exist here in the physical, this is in the reflection of who we are eternally. So the more that we integrate more of our internal lives, we're stepping more into our own eternal shoes. Our own light body is getting integrated and attached to our physical being. But not everyone exists and sees reality from the same level of our own self. Some people and souls, I am presences, and so on, want to experience reality and integrate and grow. So we exist in many, many levels. For the people and the souls and the I am presences and so on that wish to experience this third dimensional density to a greater degree, from and beyond this physical life here, is to, again, try to see that all is learning. And even though they might be living this reality and creating wars or, doing harm to other people, even though these levels to ourself would be no longer acceptable, is to truly open your hearts to the rest of the collective. To truly live and embrace them and assist them simply by your own letting go of the duality levels of being. To live from together and oneness. The more people on earth that integrate more and more unity consciousness, more and more, say, perceptual views of non-duality, unity, abundance, love without conditions, peace, harmony. We are not only changing the collective, assisting the collective mind. We are all on earth as one collective mind. We're all tied together through grids of collective consciousness. The more of us that choose to live in the non-duality states of being and choose to make decisions in our life to assist others in abundance and love, we are changing the thought patterns within the collective mind. We're integrating the frequencies from our higher levels of being into the physical form, which is assisting the earth in evolving. We are part of the earth. The more that we integrate more of our own, say, expanded eternal knowledge, we begin to know more and more of how we're connected to the earth, how we're connected to the universe. This knowledge is not separate from us. We are already it. There's no beliefs are needed. No practices, no religions are needed in order to understand what I'm saying. If we wish to use another practice or some other way to integrate this knowledge, that's all good. There's no right or bad. Everything is. And the more that we accept more of our own eternal being, step out of, say, battling with someone else or something within the spectrum range within this universe, the more that we're coming at peace and harmony within our own self. The more that we're integrating more of our eternal knowledge, as I say. So, again, for all those that are listening, still listening to this video, is to do your own research. If you have the willingness and you feel it within your own heart to learn more, to expand your own view and perception of an integration of your own I Am Presence, your own non-duality, your own Christ consciousness levels of being, is to look within your own self, to really just be the observer of your own self and what happens in the world and how it's reflecting within you. We are nothing less but a mirror of what we hold on to within, of how our perceptual view of reality works. Whatever happens in the reality, if something reflects within us and we are holding resistance to it, it's going to reflect within us. It may cause turbulence within our emotional levels of being, mental levels of being, physical levels of being, and so on. Everything comes down to resistance. What we hold within is what creates the resistance. We release, the more we release, the more peace and harmony we are within ourselves and also the reality. The more our eternal levels of being, we're allowing the space for them to come into the empty glass. Be the empty vessel. Allow things to flow. The more we hold on to things, those are the attachments. The more that it's hard for us to release and allow things to flow. So there are many, many different things out there these days to assist in this integration and this releasing. I personally offer courses and workshops in this, and there's many, many other people offering similar things in the world. So this is all up to each one of us. It's the more that we assist and transform our own selves, the more we are transforming the world. The more that we're integrating more of our own unity consciousness, and we are doing this together, and we are collectively evolving into the next universe, into our next universal experience, and which is filled with more unity and love. For those that choose not to integrate these levels of, say, more non-duality conscious levels of their own being, they will continue to have this experience to learn from and grow. So I honor all and sending out love vibrations to everyone that is still listening and are open to receive. it's up to us. Be the change that you wish to see and live. So, namaste. Till next time.